Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Stretching with Zach session tonight as part of Walk Across Texas. We are actually in our 4th week, and we have 4 more weeks to go. And tonight, I asked Zach to just come and talk about the importance of stretching before you embark on any type of physical activity. This session will be recorded, and we can send it out to those who missed it, as well as it will be placed on our YouTube channel as well. Excuse me. So I'm going to turn it over to Zach. He can introduce himself.
Thank you, Ms. Sonja. All right, so hello everyone. My name is Zachary Giblin. I'm a program assistant here in Harris County. I work specifically with 4-H. But tonight I got the pleasure of working with the FCH unit to do a stretching series and a little warm-up exercise series for you guys before we begin our walk-in. All right, so again, Sonja mentioned the importance of stretching before we do any physical activity. I cannot agree more. Making sure you have full mobility of all your joints, your muscles, your tendons before you start exercising is very important. And it's also a great way to warm up those muscles before you start using them to avoid injury. Does anyone have any questions before we begin?
We're pretty informal, so you can type in the chat or you can unmute and ask your questions along the way.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started with our stretches. So I'm gonna have to look at my little cheat sheet here to make sure I use all of them. So our first stretch is a very good one to use before you begin walking or even jogging or running. This one I call rock backs. So essentially, you'll be standing shoulder width apart, your feet shoulder width apart, and you'll take one of your foot. So we'll use our right foot first, and then put it about 1 foot in front of your other. So you should have 1 foot a little bit behind, or a staggered stance, so to speak. And we're going to try to make sure we have our balance on both of our feet. And then for the rock back motion, what we do is we'll come up on our tippy toes, so going forward. So where we're on our toes on both of our feet. And then we'll rock back to try to get our toes off the ground and focus more on putting our weight on our heels. The further apart your feet are, the harder this is. So if that's difficult for you, you can always just do it with your feet parallel to each other and rock back on a parallel stance as well. So you can do it with your feet next to each other on your tippy toes, and then back to shifting your weight to your heels. Or you can take the staggered stance by putting 1 foot slightly behind the other, and then rocking forward on your toes, and then rocking back on your heels. So we're going to go ahead and do 10 of those rock backs on both sides. Or if you're standing with your feet next to each other, we'll do a total of 20. So before we begin our sets of 10, does anyone have any questions? All right, if not, we'll go ahead and get started. So we'll start by shifting our weight forward onto our toes, and then back to our heels. You can also have your arms out to your side if that helps you maintain balance for these as well. So back forward on our toes, back to our heels, back forward to your toes, back to your heels. And we're going to go ahead and do that for 7 more reps on this side, and then we'll switch our stance and begin the other side. So you guys can go at your own pace now, and then I'll let you know when we're about to switch. Okay, you can continue doing your next set of 10 with your feet standing next to each other, or if you're taking the staggered stance, go ahead and switch to where your other foot is in the front and the foot that was in front previously is now behind. So if you guys did notice where you feel how this helps is it does help with your balance. Putting all your weight on your toes helps with your balance. And then if you go back, for me being on my heels, that's the hardest, or I have the more balance issues is being on the heels. And so this is a great way to get your balance in check before you begin walking. It also helps those little muscles around your ankles and your feet. It can help strengthen them. That way, if you do stumble when you're walking, if you're running or jogging, when you catch yourself, it'll definitely help decrease that chance of injury if you do have to stumble and catch or regain your balance during a walk or a jog. So let's go ahead and just continue doing our 10 on our next side. All right, I'll give you guys a few more minutes or seconds to finish up, and we'll move on to our next stretch. We're gonna do a slight camera shift for our next stretch. That way you guys can see what it should look like from a side view. Perfect. All right, so for our next stretch, this is another calf stretch. We'll be doing our wall calf stretch. So basically, we'll be facing a wall. If you don't have a wall, that's okay. You can still do this activity or this stretch. It just helps for maintaining your balance and making sure you're not shifting too far forward. So for this exercise or this stretch, if you do have a wall, you'll put one foot right against the wall. Your back foot will be about 1 foot length between you on this stretch. And all we're doing is we're leaning into the wall until our knee touches. You can use your hand for support as well. And you want to make sure that that back heel does not come off the ground. So if my back heel is up like this, then I won't feel the stretch. So you really want to focus on having that heel on the ground. And then you just lean into the wall. If that isn't working for you and your heel's coming off, you can always put your foot closer and then lean in to the wall, keeping your back leg straight and your heel on the ground. So the only leg that should be bending is your front leg touching the wall. It's almost like a lunge and just stopping into the wall. If you're not feeling the stretch, you can always take a further step back and then lean into the walls again. Just making sure that that back heel is staying on the ground. So what we'll do now is we'll do about 5 seconds on each side and just rotating our stances. And we'll do that for 5 times each leg. So we'll go ahead and get started. So get in your stance. And again, if you don't have a wall, you can have your hands on your hips, shoulders up, looking forward, and just leaning into it. Again, like a lunge, except for this back leg as straight as possible and that back heel on the ground. All right, we're just going to shift our camera back. You guys are more than welcome to finish up on those at your own pace. And then in a few seconds, we'll get started on our next stretch. Also, before we begin, do we have any questions about those previous two stretches? All right, awesome. So our next exercise or our next stretch will be our toe touches. I'm going to show you guys a few variations of this. You can do whichever one you like. Some are a little more challenging. Some work different parts of your tendons in your legs and your back. And so our first toe touch is just your standard shoulder width apart with your stance. And you just bend forward with your legs straight and you go down as far as you can go. So from a side view, it'll look like this. And you try to keep these legs, your legs as straight as you possibly can. Our other variation of this, it's a similar stretch to the toe touch, but the key difference is we're going to keep our back straight. So if you notice when I did it the first time, I have a very rounded back. In the lower back section, my back is very rounded. And so another way you can do this to get a more of a stretch in your lower back is you just want to try to keep it as straight as possible. So you're almost going to be pushing your hips back a little bit and focus on keeping your lower back straight. And you should feel the same amount of stretch. It'll just be a little bit higher in your hamstrings and your glutes. So again, we have our toe touches, our standard toe touches where we round our back, keeping our legs straight and just trying to go as far as we can go to touch our toes. You can also just go to your knees or go to your shins, or if you're more flexible, you can even put your hands on the floor. And again, the other variation of this stretch is to keep our lower back straight and just focus on getting that stretch in your hamstrings or the back of your legs and your glute muscles. So we're going to go down and do our standard toe touch for 10 seconds. And then we're going to come up and I'll show you a third variation of our toe touches. So whenever you guys are ready, you can hold your 10-second toe touch. Okay. So our next toe touch variation, all we're gonna do is we're gonna take a wider stance. It can be a little bit more than shoulder width apart. I'm gonna use the width of my yoga mat as my guide. So for this variation of our toe touch, we're just alternating our toes by keeping our hands straight out. And we're gonna keep our torso straight, our legs straight, and we're gonna take our left hand to our right foot or your right hand to your left foot. So for this, you really wanna focus on keeping your back straight and just rotating to touch your toe on the opposite side. When you're doing the stretch, you really want to try to look in the direction you're turning. So if I'm turning to my right, I want to try to look up to the right side of the ceiling. We're here, arms straight out, legs straight, rotating to our opposite foot. And then you alternate to the other side. And come back up. So we're going to go ahead and do 5 of those. So 5 on each side. Does anyone have any questions before we begin? All right, so you guys can go at your own pace. Just try to do 5 on each side, and then we'll move on to our next stretch. Okay, so our next stretch is also a hamstring stretch, which is the back muscle of your leg. And so for this one, it's called our dynamic hamstring sweep, or an easy way to remember it, as I call it, is to fill the bucket. So for this stretch, we're going to take a similar stance as our staggered rock backs. You want to have 1 foot back behind you, 1 in front of you, and you're going to slightly pick up your toes on that lead leg or that front leg. So for this exercise or for this stretch, we're going to bend our lower or our rear leg when we go down, and we're going to act like we're filling up a bucket of water. So your back leg is kind of bent, your front leg is straight. You're going to take your hands as if you have a bucket in your hand, and you're just going to reach down as far as you can and act like you're scooping up a bucket of water. So from a side view, remove this black yoga mat. From our side view, our rear leg is kind of bent on our knee. Our front leg is straight with our toes off the ground. And you're just going to reach down, keeping that front leg straight, and act like you're picking up some water with a bucket in your hands. So we're going to do 5 of those on each leg. Does anyone have any questions before we begin? All right, and so you can do 5 on each leg alternating, or you can do 5 at a time. It's really up to you. There's also a variation where you can walk forward as you do that as well. But given our space, we'll just do it standing still for this one. All right, how does everyone's hamstrings or rear part of your legs feel? Did you guys feel the stretch in those? Perfect. All right, so our next stretch, we're going to focus on our quads or the front muscles of our legs. So for this first quad exercise or stretch, it's a standard quad stretch that I'm sure a lot of you have seen before. We're going to go through a few variations from a beginner to a more advanced level of a quad stretch. So first, we're going to show you using the wall. Hopefully you guys can still see me. So for this, if you don't have very good balance, you can lean against the wall. And all we're going to do is pick up the leg that's not facing the wall or not closest to the wall as high as you can. So you just want to try to pick up that foot off the ground, keeping your knee perpendicular to the floor, and just pick it up off the ground as high as you can. If that's easy for you and you have that mobility, you can then, again, leaning against the wall, grab your foot and pull up your foot as high as you can, getting the stretch in your quad or that front muscle on your leg. And so remember to only pull it up as much as is comfortable. You don't want to overstretch or injure your knee or your ankle on this stretch. And so to the other side, you'll just rotate, lean against the wall. You can also grab a chair, whatever you have on hand, to make sure you don't lose balance and fall on this stretch. If you feel comfortable and you want to try to work on your balance as well, you can also do this stretch without a wall, just standing and picking up that foot, and you can put your arm out for balance. You can put it in front of you. Sometimes having my arm at a 90 degree like so, and having it in front of me helps me keep a better balance. I'm not too sure why, but it seems to work pretty well. And then the next variation, a more advanced, if you guys really want to challenge yourself, make sure you do this in a safe place if able to, or have someone help you out. You can do this stretch again with grabbing your back foot, and to add a hamstring stretch on your other leg, you just go down and try to touch your toe and then come up. You can also practice that holding onto a chair as well, just lowering yourself on the chair and then swinging yourself back up. So we're going to go ahead and do this stretch on our own, whichever one you're more comfortable with, whether you're using the wall, using a chair, or doing it working on your balance. Or if you want to try to go for the toe touch and you feel like you might be able to, I will leave that up to you. The wall is definitely the safest option though, so it is recommended. So we're going to go ahead and hold that stretch for 10 seconds on each leg twice. All right, how's everyone feel after that quad stretch? So for our next stretch, it will use some of our quads as well as some of our hip muscles, our abductors and adductors. So those are the muscles on your hips that help your leg come out and then also help it pull it back in. And we'll do this yoga mat one more time. And I apologize, I'm not too sure of the name of this stretch. It's almost like a side lunge, just focusing more on the stretch than activating the muscle. So for this stretch, you want to have a wide stance, like so. You want to have your feet facing forward, maybe slightly outwards. I'll just make sure your toes are not pointed inwards like this. You want to have them straight or even slightly outward. And so for this stretch, all we're going to do is we're going to shift our weight to our left side, hold it, and then to our right side and hold it. So you want to just take a wider step and shift your weight to your left leg. Again, making sure your toes are either pointing straight forward or slightly out, because we don't want our knee to rotate in like this where we could risk getting injured. So we'll switch to one side. We'll come back up, and then we'll shift our weight directly to our side onto our other leg. And really focus on, instead of leading with your knee or your leg, try to lead with your hip to feel that stretch. You should feel a little stretch in your outer leg as well as your inner groin on the straight leg on the other side. So this is our standard version of this exercise, is just going to our side and feeling that stretch in our inner leg or groin on our straight leg on the opposite side, and then feeling our muscle activate and our hip, feel that stretch in that hip on your bent leg. Another more advanced variation of this stretch is to go as far down as you can and keeping your other leg straight and toes pointed up. And so if you would like to try this or work your way up, how it will look is you keep that wide stance and you just shift your weight all the way down or as far down as you can. If this is as far as you can go, that's great. And you just want to focus on getting that stretch in your hip as well as your groin on the opposite straight leg. And you can alternate on your legs. So we're going to go ahead and do 5 of those on each side and just really try to focus on keeping that leg straight, toes pointed out or up, and then focus on leading with your hip to get that stretch and that abductor and adductor muscles. So again, wide stance, standing tall, shoulders back, chest pointed forward, and shifting your weight to one side. You can have your hands in front of you. You can have them on your hips. You can also have them straight out like this if that helps you as well with balance. Okay. Does anyone have any questions before we move to some of our seated stretches? What was that? Oh, yes, so your knees might crack. As long as there's no pain, that's not something to be alarmed about. My joints have cracked since I was probably 16 years old. As long as there's no pain, then that's very common. It's kind of like cracking your knuckles. Just make sure if there's something that feels weird, uncomfortable, or even painful, to modify the stretch or maybe even avoid it altogether if there is pain associated with that. So for our next series of stretches, we will be seated. So if you guys do have a yoga mat or even just a space that's cleared on your floor, you're more than welcome to do these seated exercises with us. And we'll go ahead and get started. So our first seated exercise or seated stretch will be our seated toe touches. So it'll be very similar to the toe touches we did standing. We will just be seated this time. So our first seated toe touches, we'll do them with our legs straight out and close together. And you'll just go and try to touch your toes. Make sure your knees don't come up. You really want to focus on those straight legs. And you should really feel the stretch in your hamstrings, those muscles on the back of your legs, and also your glutes, and maybe even your lower back. So again, you're here. You want to have your chest looking forward, chin up, shoulders back, and just lean forward as far as you can to touch those toes. So we're going to hold this one for 10 seconds, and then we'll come up and we'll go down for another 10 seconds. So whenever you guys are ready, you can move at your own pace, or you can follow along with me. All right, for the next variation of our seated toe touches, you can either have your legs as wide out as you can go, or if you're able to with your knee, you're just going to take one foot and bring it in to the inside of your straight leg. And for this one, you can either use the same arm on the same side and lean into your toe, or you can take your opposite arm and look across your leg and try to touch your toes with your opposite arm. So right now I'm using my left arm to my right foot or right leg. So you can either reach on the same side, right arm to right foot, or you can reach across, left arm to right foot. With the reach across, you might feel more of a stretch on the right side of your back, or whatever side your straight leg is on. So we'll go ahead and hold this for 10 seconds, and we'll do the same thing on our other side. All right, now you can either keep your same wide stance, or if you were going with your other leg bent on the inside, switch to your other leg. And we will hold this side for 10 seconds as well. All right, so our next stretch is another groin stretch and abductor, adductor hip stretch. And this is our butterfly stretch. So for this one, we'll bring both of our feet together in front of us. And the objective of this stretch is to get your knees as close to the ground as you can, grabbing your ankles and then using your elbows to push those knees to the floor. If you're unable to get your feet together in this position, you can always keep one leg straight and just put your foot on wherever parts of your leg is most comfortable for you. And you can push down on that knee with your opposite hand. So if you're unable to get into this position, you can always just put one foot on your straight leg and with your opposite hand, push this knee to the floor. So if you're able to get in your butterfly position, we'll go ahead and do that. You just want to use your elbows to push your legs down to try to get your knees to the floor. And we'll hold this position for 10 seconds. We'll come back up and then do another 10 seconds. So if you're doing the other variation, just do 10 seconds on each side. You may also lean forward and you might get more of a stretch as well. And back up or switch legs. And back down for 10 more seconds. All right, so next we're going to move on to another hip abductor and adductor stretch. For this one, we'll stay seated like this. We'll keep one leg straight and you'll take your other leg and put it across your straight leg. So right now my left foot is on the right side of my right leg. So all I did was sitting straight. I took this leg, I bent it and planted it right next to my knee on the right side of my right leg. So once we are here, you can hold it in this position if this is a good stretch for you, or you can also plant on the side that your knee is up. You'll take your opposite arm and put your elbow behind your knee, and you'll just use that to push this leg with the knee up towards your chest to get that stretch. And then you can also rotate out so you get more of a stretch in your hips and then also in your lower back. So again, on this one, both of our legs are straight. Pick up one leg and cross it over your straight leg. You'll take your same hand that's on the side of your bent leg and plant it to the side. And now we take your other hand and push that elbow behind your knee and use that to push it in towards your chest. And then you can rotate to the other side to feel that stretch in your hips, as well as your lower back and your obliques or your torso. The side of your torso should get a nice stretch in there as well. Again, if you're unable to get this arm over and turn, you can always just stay here and use this hand to push as much as comfortable. If you're not feeling the stretch, you can always pull your foot up closer to your hips to where it's higher up on your body and pull that leg in and rotate across. So we're going to hold this for 10 seconds on each side. All right. For our last seated stretch, we're going to come up to our knees if you're able to and sit in this position. Or if you need to stand until we get to the position, that's fine as well. So basically, we're going to be on our knees, and you're going to take one foot and bring it in front of you to where you're almost in a lunging position. So you don't want all of your weight on that back knee. You want to try to even it out to where you have weight on your foot in front of you, on your knee, and then if you have ankle mobility, you can even put your foot extended out behind you. And for this stretch, all we're doing is we're staying in this position, we're keeping our chest up, shoulders back, and we're going to push forward to get the stretch in our hamstrings, our groin, and also our hips. So again, we're in almost a lunge position. And we're just going to lean forward to get that stretch in your hips and your hamstrings as well as your groin. So for this stretch, we're going to hold it for 10 seconds on each side. If you aren't feeling the stretch, another more advanced version of the stretch is to pick up this back foot in front of you and lean into it like so. And so with that, not only will it stretch this hamstring, it'll also stretch the quad or the front part of the muscle on the leg with the knee down. So again, 10 seconds on each side, and then we will move into our final warm-up exercises before you guys are ready to walk or exercise, run, jog, whatever you guys plan on doing in the next few weeks. So 10 seconds, and then we'll switch. All right, whenever you guys are ready, you are able to stand up and we'll move into our actual exercises. Does anyone have any questions about any of our stretches or anything else before we move on to our simple body weight exercises? All right. So our first exercise will be a simple lunge, which we did a lot of that movement already. And so you should feel that you might have more mobility than usual on these lunges. So if we're starting from a standard standing position with our feet shoulder width apart, all you're going to do is take a step forward to where there's about 1.5 to 2 feet in between your feet. And you're going to bend down with that front leg. And you can also bend your rear leg on this since we're not doing the stretch. So from a side view, if we're here, we're going to be bending both of our legs at the same time, as far down that is comfortable for you, your legs, your knees. So you want to make sure that you feel your muscles being activated, but there shouldn't be any actual pain in your knees, in your ankles, or anywhere else. So we're here, staggered stance. We're just going to bend down into a lunge position and come back up. So when doing these lunges, you can do, if you're doing this as an exercise, you can do all on the same leg and then switch legs, or you can also alternate in between each repetition. So we can do every rep here, going up and down. Or my personal preference, because it makes me feel like I'm more balanced, is I'll step forward with the lunge, and I immediately come back up, and I switch, step forward with the lunge, immediately come back up. So we're going to do 5 repetitions on each leg. And again, just make sure you're going down as much as is comfortable for you, and to really listen to your legs. And if you're feeling pain, then maybe modify, go down lower, or just sit out on this exercise as well. So at your own pace, we're going to do 5 reps on each leg. You can follow along with me or just go at your own pace. Okay, our last leg exercise, warm-up exercise, will be our air squats, or just body weight squats. So for your squats, you want to be no narrower than shoulder width apart. So my legs shouldn't be this close together. They should be at least in line with my shoulders, or even a little wider if that's more comfortable for you. We also want our toes pointed straight forward or even slightly outwards, just as long as they're not pointed in like this. And for this squat, it's very similar to if you were to sit into a chair. And so I have a chair here for demonstration. And we also want to make sure our chest is up, our shoulders are back, and we're looking forward the entire time. So it's very similar again to just sitting down in the chair. I like to keep my arms out in front of me to help maintain balance and to make sure that my chest is pointed forward and not down. We want to have our feet shoulder width apart. And it's just like you're sitting down into a chair. And so if you have a chair, you can even do chair squats where you do sit down slowly, pause, and then stand back up. Or if you don't have a chair, you can do it without that as well, and just have a slight pause once you're lowered down into your squat. So for these, we're going to do 5, just because we want to try to focus on either holding that position in the chair or holding our form in the lowered position. So again, feet shoulder width apart, arms out in front of you, face, shoulder, chest looking forward, like you're sitting into a chair, and back up, or from the side view, or here. So at your own pace, you can go ahead and do 5, or you can follow along with me if you would like to as well. All right, so since we're running a little short on time, we're just going to do a couple more exercises for our shoulders. So this is our Walk Across Texas exercise program, and so we are kidding this to help you guys get out and walk. Believe it or not, you can injure your arms and shoulders from just walking. So we want to make sure that before we do our walks, our jogs, our runs, that we have our shoulders warmed up and that those muscles are activated before we go, and also while we're on that walk. So a very simple shoulder warm-up exercise is just your shoulder circles or shoulder rotations. So for this, you'll just have your arms straight out, and we'll do small shoulder circles forward, and then small shoulder circles backwards, and then we'll do larger forward and larger backwards. So when we're doing this shoulder rotation, we don't want our entire shoulders moving when we're doing our rotations. You want to have them sitting straight out and tight. So you want your shoulder blades pinched back, and you want to really focus on the small muscles in your shoulders doing the work and not your actual joints of your shoulders doing the work. So we'll go ahead and do 10 forward and backwards, small, and then 10 forward and backwards with our larger rotations. So whenever you guys are ready, we can get those done. So again, our smaller shoulder rotations first. And now backwards. And now our larger rotations forward. And now backwards. Some other good exercises are your shoulder raises. So just focusing on coming up to this position and slowly lowering it back down. And then also slowly raising your arms in front of you and lowering them back down. If your shoulders do feel tight or sore after those, it's amazing how much little work it takes for your shoulders to get tired. We do have a good stretch is to just pull your arm across with your elbow straight and holding that position. So again, just taking your arm straight in front of you, pulling across your body, and using your other arm to pull it in towards your chest. Another good variation of the stretch, if you want to get a deeper stretch, is you pull it with you and you rotate to the side that your hand is on. So again, arms straight in front of you, pulling it to your side, pulling it close to your chest, and then if you want to get a deeper stretch, rotate to the side that your hand is across. All right, so that is our time. I did have some more. Unfortunately, we ran out of time to show you guys. I just wanted to leave a little bit of time. If you guys have any questions, comments, stories, concerns, feel free to let me know in the chat, or you can unmute yourself to let us know now. And if there's anything I don't know exactly yet, I will definitely find an answer for you guys as soon as possible. So thank you guys again for joining. I really enjoyed doing this stretching series and our short exercise series. So I hope you guys have a great time with your walks, your exercise, jogs, whatever it is you're into. And hopefully you guys can use this to get warmed up before you go.
Great job, Zach. Thank you so much. I know I will sleep good tonight. It feels like I've had a real hard workout and just a lot of cracking, cracking that I never heard before. But I really feel like the stretching was very beneficial for me, especially the shoulders. It was hard to even do those little 10 rotations. My shoulders were tired. So I definitely know that's something I have to work on. Would anyone else like to share any comments?
Thank you, Zach.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, Zach. Thank you so much. And like I said, we will share this. We will share the recording so that everyone can have an opportunity to review it, especially for those who could not participate tonight. But thank you all, and we will get it out to you next week. And continue to walk and continue to log your miles, and also send us pictures for our weekly newsletter. Good night.
All right, guys. Thank you.